Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 185 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So today, I have a really fun one for you guys. This is actually a repost of an episode. Shout out to my student Xavier who gave me this idea when we were at PANS. But I was going to start to post on Tuesdays like every other week and post a new interview. I didn't want to commit to trying to post an interview every single week. And that was going to be the plan. There was just going to be an empty space on your Tuesday calendar where you're just sad and wishing that there was a new I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Man, I haven't messed up Jiu-Jitsu in a long time. If you guys listen to any of the reposts, you will hear me in my old pronunciation of jiu-jitsu and the pronunciation that just had people roasting me online. That was pretty much all the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show's online commentary was people talking about how I said jiu-jitsu, which I do say in this interview, so you guys will get to hear that, get to experience that. Also, in this interview, quick disclaimer, as often is required when you have a Kyle Watson episode of a podcast or a YouTube video or anything, we're two pretty fun guys that like to just say things that some people might find off-putting. And so there is a point in this episode, and it lasts a good amount of time. It's probably about 8 minutes, where we discuss the morality of if Kyle's pet pig, which he has at his house still to this day, spoiler alert, if it were to die of natural causes, would it be wrong to eat? And if that question is off-putting to you in any way, you probably should skip those 8 minutes. Nice thing about podcasts is you can just hit that little 15-second button until we stop talking about it. But don't worry, if you really like Kyle's episode, we do re-bring it up in every single episode of the show that he's ever been on. And he will be on again very soon, and we will probably discuss the same thing. Again, it's just a very important topic for a lot of the original I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show listeners. And so you will get introduced to that. You'll get to hear some great dad jokes from Kyle Watson. But to me, you will hear something that I think people talk about me as like something really impressive, that I have this really, I just notice when maybe it's just in my head, maybe no one actually says this, but when people kind of give me compliments, one of the biggest compliments that I get is how I learn, how willing I am to learn, and how much I can retain. And what's interesting of that is I don't think a skill that I had growing up as much. It was really a skill that was developed in jiu-jitsu, and to me, it was kind of completely developed through having a great coach. And that's really what this first episode was about. 3 years ago when I was starting the show, I knew that getting Kyle on the show and having him talk about the importance of learning forever and not just being not just having a fixed mindset like we talk about on the show all the time, but having a growth mindset. And this is the guy I learned that from. And even to this day, some of the stuff, I was re-listening to this episode, some of the stuff that we talk about on this episode, he has, or I have learned better and understood it more. And I think that that's uncommon when you get people, once they get to black belt in jiu-jitsu. It's very easy to get your black belt and say, okay, now I am just going to just give knowledge and no longer receive it. But the people that are best at giving knowledge are the people that tend to find wherever they can to receive it. And that's something I've always learned from my coach. And I think you guys will like some of the ideas that he talks about to develop those habits and just to be a better learner. And so without further ado, let's get into the first ever repost episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, my interview from 3 years ago with Kyle Watson. All right, we're going. We're live. Kyle Watson, how are you doing today?
I am great, man. Just got done training, a little beat up. Just got a shower, ready to chat a little bit.
All right, sweet. So you have any New Year's Eve plans?
No, super boring. My wife is on a 3 in a row shifts for the hospital, so she'll have to be up by like 4:35 a.m. tomorrow, which means we'll probably both fall asleep on the couch about 10 o'clock.
All right. Sounds good. That sounds like a fun New Year's Eve.
Wait, important question to start this off.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to cuss?
I mean, I haven't been asked that, but sure, you can say whatever you want. You know,
Just curious, in case it slips.
Yeah, if you could keep all of your white power rants and stuff just to a minimum, though, I think that would be appreciated.
I'll hold it down deep down inside.
Yeah, for sure. And just, any excessive drug use stories, anything like that,
Okay.
maybe just keep it a little bit friendly. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's up to you. If you feel the need to talk about them, you can.
Okay. I'm gonna assume your audience is pretty accepting of me, but I don't wanna go reach too far.
Yeah, so maybe I'll have you on a few times, and you can slowly let the layers of Kyle Watson.
Oh, right.
Kind of. Yeah.
Slowly let people lose respect a little bit at a time.
Exactly. Think of the audience as a white belt that just came to your gym. You're waiting for him to start to get comfortable before you start to get too crazy.
I understand. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Deal.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, just wanted to open it up just with something a little fun. This is episode 7 of the podcast. Okay. So we're 7 episodes in.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So it's a pretty big deal. We've done 6 episodes, but of those 6 episodes, 2 separate occasions, a Kyle Watson has been brought up. Not you, Kyle Watson, but a Kyle Watson. Someone
as in the thing that happens, an event.
Yes, someone performing a Kyle Watson. Okay, someone would ask a question about your crazy man strength, and so we had to discuss what a Kyle Watson was. So,
Sure.
Just in your best words, can you tell me and the audience what a Kyle Watson is and where you think that power comes from?
Oh man. So it's basically when you make up your mind in a split second that you will do everything in your power to not let a score happen. Like anything in your power, you'll summon it deep from your innards, bring it all out, and you gotta make some kind of real powerful grunt. If you don't grunt, usually it doesn't work. I've noticed. Like you gotta grunt like audibly, where at least like 2 groups over they can hear the grunt, and then you summon it from deep down inside, like a Dragon Ball Z Kamehameha, and
Okay.
And you end up like not accepting the 2 points or whatever it might be.
So follow up on it. If it came between, like, if you started a Kyle Watson and the situation happened where you may die, would you continue with the Kyle Watson? Is it possible to stop? Is it possible to pull the plug when you summon that power?
No. Once that train is off the tracks, there's no stopping it.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah. It can be dangerous. It's not.
Yeah.
Is it something you teach in your classes? It's not something
you can't teach it. You have to be born with it. And yeah, I mean, once it's started, you can't stop it. So I would say be very careful. It's one of those powers you have to be responsible with.
That makes sense. Does your son Reed happen to have that? Does he have the power?
No, I'm starting. He's so young. It's kind of like when you read in comic books, like you don't know certain ages mutant powers come out. You don't know when they're gonna fully manifest. And I've seen some little inklings, but I don't know if he's got it yet. We just got to wait and see. But so far, his viciousness is it's leading me to believe he's got it.
Okay. Have you tried like a vat of toxic waste, or have you tried putting him in any high stress situations?
No, but I beat him a lot, and I just see how he takes it. Like, see how much he fights back.
That makes sense. That's good parenting right there. We could just go with the whole episode on parenting, but I think we might just switch our focus a little bit more to jiu-jitsu specifically.
Deal.
If that's cool with you.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. So just wanted to start out the seriousness of this. And this is something I've always found interesting. Now in jiu-jitsu, everybody knows who John Danaher is. And everybody's aware that he is this great coach. When you were on The Ultimate Fighter, you had the pleasure of getting to train with him.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that maybe a lot of people might be curious about. Is you always hear about him as a coach, but nobody ever hears about what it was like rolling with him and actually getting to train with him. And so, were you able to do rounds with him?
Well, first, let me say that I'm not sure how much Ultimate Fighter I want to talk about, because every time, the audience doesn't know this, but like almost anytime you and I are out in public, say we're in a gas station, maybe a hotel lobby, or anywhere where there's just some random person, and Josh will lead off by, "Hey, do you know who this is?" talking about me, and then say he is a semifinalist on the Ultimate Fighter season 12. And some people act like they don't hear you. Some people hear you, but kind of roll your eyes, like kind of like when you get like a tie for Christmas or something like that, and they look at you like I don't really care, and that's usually how it goes. So anyway, so I knew some questions from Ultimate Fighter were gonna
At the St. Louis airport, we did get free coffee one time. We got free Starbucks.
Okay, touche. Okay, but all right, I'll tell you some stuff. Okay, so yeah, when we went on the show, one, I was really excited to be picked by Team GSP, and because I wasn't a big fan of Koscheck, I was a big fan of GSP, but plus, seeing the coaching staff he had, I didn't know a lot about the mysterious John Danaher at the time. It's really weird because a lot of time, like right now, everybody knows who he is. Now everybody in the jiu-jitsu community knows who he is, what kind of champions he's created. But back then, it was just kind of this mystique. You didn't really know. You just heard about this like Yoda type figure in the blue basement at Henzo's who was like amazing, and like nobody had tapped him since purple belt. And there's all these kind of like legend stories similar to Hickson, but not maybe that crazy. And so, but you knew right away, as soon as you met the guy, you knew right away, okay, this guy's different. This guy's special. Something's different about him. And it was incredible. Going on the show, I felt like I was one of the better jiu-jitsu guys. I was a brown belt at the time, but after rolling with a bunch of the guys, I felt like one of the more skilled jiu-jitsu practitioners. And going with John just made you feel like you knew nothing, and you were just a complete like loser white belt. Not that white belts are losers, but like I mean a white belt who is also a loser. And he just like, it was crazy because I felt like I wasn't real easy to tap at that point, but like he would literally tap me 5 or 6 times in a 5-minute round. And I was just like, what is this wizardry? But even more than that, what was special about him, it wasn't even just that he kicked all of our asses. I mean, he would just go down the line, beat up each guy on our team. He would beat up GSP. He beat up everybody that was there on the mat, and but what was more amazing was his ability to like develop tactics and strategy for fights. He was able to like figure out game plans that were super solid. Just after watching a little bit of footage of a guy or watch him, he could definitely pinpoint, okay, this guy gets beat by this type of pressure. This is what you do. And it was pretty fascinating.
Yes, that's really cool. And so
he also had a comb over at that time too.
Oh yeah, he did have hair. I remember that. Yeah. How do you prefer him, bald or with the comb over?
Oh, definitely bald. We were talking about that. That was one of those stages where it's like, just let it go, man. Just let it go. It's like, stop fighting it. Stop fighting it with that comb over. Plus, he just looks more evil genius with the shaved head and the rash guard.
That makes sense. And he still wore rash guards then, though, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Every day.
Yeah.
They even said they would go to. Well, I won't get into those stories. Carry on.
Okay, I know where you were going with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's episode 2 or 3 of Kyle Watson too.
Yeah, I don't know when I want to leak on that kind of stuff because when this podcast just becomes like uber famous, I could get in trouble for some of the things I say.
You're right. You could, but you know what? Controversy creates cash, Kyle. So we could.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Maybe we should spend the next 50 minutes just calling people out.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So you're talking about, that he was getting a lot of submissions in rounds. Was it leg locks then? Was he?
No. Yeah. Actually, it wasn't. I mean, then it seemed like he was kind of focusing because I would kind of watch him off to the side because Sean Williams was there the whole time on the show with us. And I kind of watch him off to the side, train with GSP and Sean Williams. And they were definitely dissecting things together. When you get great minds together and they were kind of feeding off each other and like, hey, look at this. What do you think of this? And I saw him working guillotines a lot. So he definitely was hitting guillotines. I know he got me a lot of omoplatas. But that was the main thing I remember. I mean, he got me in a lot of stuff, but I don't even remember him catching me in a footlock at all. I remember omoplatas, guillotines, probably a back take or two, but I don't remember a single footlock.
So what you're saying is he was ignoring 50% of the body.
At the time. Well, I think it wasn't as much that he was ignoring it. It was that he against me, he didn't need it. It was kind of like, it was like I've got all these tools, but I probably only need two of them for this guy.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So I don't actually have a ton of questions about the show and as much about your MMA career, which you did have a good MMA career. But kind of my other question about your MMA career, and this is something that we talked about before, but if you were in your 20s and you were going to do it all over again, would you have fought MMA? And even if you, whether you had or hadn't wanted to do so, would you have approached it the same way?
No, definitely not. Well, so wait, yes. So let me. That's a couple parter. I think that for sure, it's hard to say no. I wouldn't have done MMA. Like my thinking now, as I watch people do it, I even still coach guys who do it, and I look at them. I just see the trauma, and I see that emotional roller coaster. And I was one of the lucky ones to kind of, work hard and then be around the right people. Have a lot of the right the right atmosphere. Everything just kind of came together and worked for me, and I was blessed in a lot of ways. But I see so many people that have the exact same struggles but don't get those opportunities, and it's hard to watch the heartbreak of seeing them sacrifice so much and kind of like really putting their family on the back burner, putting a real job on the back burner, putting education on the back burner, just to see them rack up hospital bills and get beat up. From that standpoint, um, you know, I could say, man, I wouldn't have done that. But if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have got the experiences I did. I wouldn't have been able to, meet some of the amazing people, train with some of the amazing people, travel all over the world and stuff. So I can't really say I wouldn't have done it. Um, but it is harder for me to watch now when I see people go through all the trials and sacrifices, but then not get the same opportunities. So that's tough. I do definitely think that I'm gonna have a hard time like letting my son do it. I don't, so I'll be totally supportive about jujitsu, but I'm really torn on MMA. And he can always say, "Well, you did it, Dad. Why can't I?" And I think that'll always be a tough conversation. I kind of got to be prepared for. But as far as your second part of that question is, would I change anything about it, or would I train the same? I would do things totally different. That was one of the most eye-opening things. Even though I was really far down in my career, it's kind of a shame that I was at the end of my career when I was on Ultimate Fighter, or pretty close to it, was because like my eyes were really opened up by George and his coaches to just a different style of just really um, just the strategic aspects and training properly and prehab and rehab, and then really focusing on certain aspects of the game and just certain methods that I wasn't doing. We trained a lot we trained a lot that was just like, we're just gonna out cardio them, out strength them, out just outwork the person. But that just tears up the body, and it's just not the intelligent way to train. And I just think I spent so much of my career just thinking I got to do more, I got to do more, I got to do more to be better. When I really picked up from George and his coaches that that's not right. That isn't what you need to do to be the best.
So do you think it was maybe they treated you more as a professional athlete at those type of places compared to, I mean, I think still a lot of gyms nowadays that are for MMA, it is that just be tough, like you're in a fight. It's just like when you're at the bar, just be tough.
Well, I think it's, yeah, not even as much that they treat it professionally, even though they do. Some of the gyms that I've been fortunate enough to be at, but it's more that they treat MMA as a science, and not like MMA is just this like, okay, you got to be good at punching, kicking, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. It's like, we all know that that's like a super vague thing. It's like more the science of like, understanding how all the pieces fit together, but not only how they fit together, but how they fit together for you. You know what I mean? Like, so, some guys gravitate towards striking. So you want to make sure that they can still be good strikers, but with great takedown defense. And some people want to be good jiu-jitsu guys, but they want to be able to be good jiu-jitsu guys without being able to take punches and take a lot of punishment and be able to like manage the distance and be really good in transition. So it's just about like taking the person and their body type and maybe the skill set they already possess and then make them the best with that, not trying to cookie cutter make everybody like, oh, you got to be a good striker, you got to be good at wrestling, you got to be good at jiu-jitsu. Not everybody can be really, really good at all those things. It's if that makes sense. It's kind of like,
Yeah, for sure.
really hone in on developing a game that will be able to hide and defend your weaknesses and really fully expose your strengths, you know.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. While we're on the subject of kind of fight preparation and things like that, you have a main event spot on the first, what would you call that? The first event of the Fuji Pro?
Yeah, the Fuji World Pro first event. It's like a rebranded, new event, kind of carrying on the legacy and the torch of the Respect event. And yeah, I'm really excited. Although I must say, I think I mentioned to you, I'm really thankful and grateful to be the main event, but I didn't really want that status. You know what I mean? It's like I said, there's so many good black belts on the card, so many good black belts who I think are better than me and more exciting than me that I think make for a good main event. So I was kind of like not ready for that kind of exposure, but I'm still grateful and I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
So what will your preparation be leading up? What if you had to check boxes, what boxes do you want to check before you go on the mat to compete?
I need to summon up and save as many Kyle Watsons as possible.
Okay.
That's one. No, I missed the last part. What was the last part of your question?
I was just saying, I was just letting people know we're a month out from this.
Yeah. So it's multifaceted. One is my weight cut. I'm a little heavy right now just because of the holidays, but one's a weight cut. But it's for me, like at my age, it's like managing like hard training with kind of trying to make my strategy kind of laser focused. So it's like right now with one match, I don't need to be going in and doing like a million rounds and like beating myself up. It's really just kind of like honing in on a few of the things that are working really well or that I think will work really well, and then try to put those things together. So I think right now it's kind of like these next couple weeks is like pushing my cardio, kind of funneling the things that have been working down to just like shaving off the things I think, yeah, that's okay, but I'm just not hitting it enough. This I feel really strong in. And then the last few weeks, I'll really focus on, everything that happens from the feet all the way down, probably get definitely some reps in on that overtime in case it goes there. So I'm ready for that extra minute that I can stay strong. And so I think it's just like about peaking at the right time and staying injury free for me. I've competed a lot, so it's not like this thing where it's like foreign to me. It's just I know my body and I know my timing. And it's just I got to like make sure that I just space everything out properly.
So, kind of at what point did you start to transition your training to be like that, to where you started to get older, you started to realize, hey, I can't train the same way that I did when I was a spry young 25-year-old?
Oh man, it was rough. Well, I tell people like I felt like there was a couple of like ages where I noticed a difference. Like I felt super strong and young and healthy, and I could train twice a day, like 5 days a week when I was like 27, 28. But I still didn't even really notice it like a dip where I'm like, man, I'm more beat up than usual. The weight's sticking on a little bit heavier. I noticed that literally between 32 and 33, where I literally noticed it and I thought about it a lot. That was the first change. That was like 32 and 33. I like started to slow down a little bit. But then honestly, sadly enough, this year has been the second stage of that. Like I felt like 39 to 40. I just turned 40 a few months ago. And 39 to 40 was the second round of that noticeable change where like now I'm even more beat up and I feel like I can't most of the time I take the weekend off. Like I train Monday, Wednesday, Friday decently hard, and I lift Tuesday, Thursday. I take Saturday, Sunday off. But even that, I feel like Monday, most of the time, I'm still not recovered. And part of it could be sleep and all the other stuff I have going on. I don't think it's just training. Obviously, I'm trying to be a good dad and husband, run 2 businesses and things like that. So that definitely plays in. My sleep's not always the best. But it's just frustrating when, like, I'll talk to some of my buddies who've been doing it as long as I have, and they're talking about, like, man, yeah, I train like 5 days a week and sometimes twice a day, and I'll jump into my fundamentals class and I'll roll a couple rounds. I'm like, man, how do you do that? I'm like, I cannot do that. Like 3 days a week hard. That's about all I can do and still stay injury free. I don't think that makes that. I was just kind of telling you what I do now, but I don't know if that was actually your question.
That was definitely part of it. That was kind of just, I think the age range of people that listen to this varies a lot. And so for the people that are older, I think it's really important for them to kind of understand that they are older, and the people that are younger, it's important for them to understand that they will get older eventually, and starting to being able to prepare for that transition. I think sometimes people struggle in that 30 to 35 range that they say, well, I used to be able to do this, so I should still be able to do this.
Well, yeah, it's like the perfect, title of your podcast, I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu. It's like yesterday. Like yesterday, I was rolling with you first round. You submitted me 3 times in 5 minutes. I walked over to the other black belts and I said, I'm quitting. And I didn't mean for the day. I said, I'm quitting Jiu-Jitsu completely. And I'm just like, I'm done. I dropped my belt. I'm still thinking about it. I might quit, this Fuji World Pro thing's still going on, so I'm still kind of up in the air about it. But anyway, so that was one of those days where I'm like, man, I suck at jiu-jitsu. But anyway, carry on.
I think it's cool for people to understand that happens sometimes, like to everybody, that there are just days that you go in and you're like, oh man, today's I don't want to do this anymore. I could just stay home. I could just teach. I think I have enough jiu-jitsu knowledge now that I could just teach classes and just run the business and be fine. Be done with competing.
No, but all jokes aside, I love training. It's just frustrating. It's kind of like one of the days I was lifting, and like almost every exercise I did, something hurt, and I felt like the weight wasn't that heavy, but I was like, I couldn't do the movement because something hurt, and I got so mad at myself. I'm just like, man, this sucks. I cannot like even do regular things without stuff hurting. And but sometimes you just gotta suck it up. It's like one of the things I felt like I have been better at is like my trainer Trevor, which he like. For a long time, I was like, every time we'd lift, I'd be like, and I'd be like, and I would complain a lot, and I'd be like, this hurts and that hurts, and I would always feel like I was being like this, like kind of sore sport, like just being like, nobody wants to be around a person like that that's all whiny and complaining and stuff like that. And then I just noticed, you know what, I'm just gonna bite my tongue, shut up, work through the pain, see how it does. Or see how I do. And man, I know so much big difference. I still struggle with that sometimes when I'm training jiu-jitsu. I complain a lot. But I just noticed that, man, my lifts have improved. I've been feeling so much better just because I'm not mentally like verbalizing it and being a little bitch and just like not complaining. Just like, all right, it hurts, work through it. If it hurts too bad you can't do it, ask for a different exercise. And I'm trying to bring that over to jiu-jitsu too. Not that, I mean, things are going to hurt. You're going to be sore. You're going to be tough. And it's kind of like, your dad, who I admire a lot. And I listen to your podcast with him, and it's the same thing. It's like that I look up to him a lot for like how much he's had to deal with, but he still always perseveres and still is like, I'm still going to train. I'm still going to train. Even if it's less than before, I'm still going to train. And I'm the same way. Like there's no way. Like if I go like a week without training, like I feel so just anxious and I just can't do it. So no matter if it hurts or not, I still got to go do it.
That makes sense. On that, I want to move on, but I kind of just had a thought while you were talking. I think I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I think the best way to phrase it would be, how do you know when you should persevere, when you should push through it physically, and how do you know when you need to rest?
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing, and it's kind of like what your dad was saying. It's such a like ambiguous kind of vague answer too that I don't think is good for the person who just doesn't know. It doesn't really answer it for him. I think that whole adage of listening to your body, while it is the correct answer, it's a tough pill to swallow, because some people might be like, well, what does that mean? Listen to my body. Like, if I'm tough, I can still tough it out even if it hurts. What does that mean, really? But I think as more you do jiu-jitsu, you learn your limits, you learn your limitations, you learn what your body can do and can't do, and you learn how, and I think that's kind of also what you said in your when our podcast was about testing and experimenting. So that's what you do. You push your limits. So if you're training and maybe you're kind of beat up and something's hurting, but you're like, no, I want to train more. I want to train more. And you do that extra round or two. And then the next day you are like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Well, then, the next time, if that's the threshold, then stop 2 rounds earlier. You know what I mean? So I think that's a matter of testing too. No one's going to know. No one's going to know right off the bat unless you test those boundaries and test those thresholds that you're going to be. When you say listen to your body, well, what does that mean? Well, you listen to it based on what has happened to you so far. It's like if you have pushed the boundary too far last time, don't go as far next time. You know what I mean? So it's a hard answer to be like, hey, listen to your body. Because sometimes you'll wake up and be like, man, I'm really sore, but I still think I could train. Mm-hmm. Well, sore and injured are two different things. You know what I mean? So there's or sore to the point of if I train, I might become injured is another thing. You know what I mean? So I really think that thing is still important, although vague. Listen to your body, I think, is the ultimate thing. So there's some days when I'll come in to an open mat and I'm just not feeling. I'm feeling rough. So I'll literally sit out 3 back-to-back rounds and talk to some people, or just sit and just watch other people roll. And it's like, yeah, do I not like that I'm resting that much? No, but at the same time, I know if I would have went the next 2 rounds back-to-back that I would have been done for the day. And I needed to sit out for a little bit. You know what I mean? So,
and that makes sense to me. I guess it is just something that you start to pick up as you've trained longer and longer. I can remember 2 months ago, just because I know where my limit is doesn't mean I always listen to it. Sure. And so I think I want to say it was probably 2 months ago. I did a bunch of rounds at an open mat, did something like 17 or 18 5-minute rounds. Then the next day, I wasn't going to, on Mondays, I always go to your gym and do another open mat, and we train pretty hard. And I knew that I was well over my limit and I shouldn't do it. And one of my students texted me and was like, hey, we're going over to Kyle's today, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go. And went and I trained and I got sick. And after that, I was sick for 2 weeks. And so really pushing through that, it didn't make sense. It was probably a really bad move for me to do that, because it cost me 2 weeks of training.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. I just think it's hard, but I think the only way to tell someone is just literally just kind of just test it, and not the point where if you have a legitimate injury, you should probably rest it. You know what I mean? It's don't go train if you have a legit injury, but there's some injuries you can still train with and still be okay. And sometimes it's not always terrible to train. It's just picking the right partners. And then knowing that if you're injured and you have a legit injury, that you're probably not going to go live, but there's still some drilling you can get away with. But it's still definitely listening to your body, and testing.
That makes sense. Okay, so now at this point, I want to talk about what I really wanted to talk to you about the whole
dad
time.
Jokes.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is for the next half hour, you're just going to tell dad jokes.
Okay. So I was watching Star Wars the other day with my son, and it was that part where Luke was cutting open that tauntaun to crawl inside, and my son's like, what's he doing? I'm like, he's crawling inside this tauntaun to stay warm. He's like, how warm is it? And I was like, lukewarm.
Oh man, that I think that might have covered all the dad jokes that needed to be covered.
Hey guys, I thought just right now would be as good of a time as ever to jump into the Josh McKinney, Kyle Watson first ever interview that we've ever done together. We've done a lot since, a lot of which we did on Facebook Lives during COVID that we had to censor out and eventually delete because when you're doing a podcast or something with Kyle Watson. It's just how it goes. But anyway, I just wanted to interrupt really quick and tell you guys about something really exciting we have going on at simplifyingjujitsu.com. And that is the 3 Lenses ebook. The 3 Lenses is absolutely free. I tell you guys about it every single week. So I thought I would make sure to add on, if you go to simplifyingjujitsu.com/takedown, there is one of the best takedown instructionals that I've ever seen. And of course, I'm biased because it is my coach and I did record it and edit it and help put it together. But it is called Simplifying Takedowns, and it's Simplifying Takedowns for BJJ. Kyle Watson is one of the best wrestlers in jiu-jitsu in his division. Has like a 75% takedown rate, which is just absolutely obnoxious. And that was when we recorded this instructional, Simplifying Takedowns. He has actually since only hit takedowns ever since that tournament, or ever since that instructional. And so I am sure that the rate is even higher at this point. It's probably even into the 80s. But his success in takedowns is just absolutely obnoxious. He also did not wrestle in high school or college. He learned it all while training jiu-jitsu. And so his wrestling is kind of melted into jiu-jitsu, and you don't have somebody taking this big piece of knowledge from wrestling and trying to get it to fit into jiu-jitsu. You have someone who has spent 20 plus years perfecting takedowns for BJJ. And so I know I'm rambling on, so I'll just make sure to let you guys know right now, you could go to simplifyingjujitsu.com/takedown and check out Kyle Watson's latest instructional, Simplifying Takedowns for BJJ.
Did your son get that joke?
No. It went right past me.
It's tough. It's tough being a creative genius, because people just don't get it.
I know. Hey, you know what? The best thing about like thinking your own jokes is funny is that you can always entertain yourself.
That is true. It's always nice to be able to make yourself laugh, even if no one else does.
That's true.
But just back onto the topic. We're off of the dad jokes for at least 5 or 10 more minutes.
Okay.
And then, so looking back on it, you fought in the UFC. You're still currently competing at the black belt level of jiu-jitsu. You have a very successful gym. Your gym is, how big is your gym?
It's 10,300 square feet.
Yeah. Very large gym, and, actually now you're getting involved in real estate and having success in that too. Okay. Yeah. So I've been around basically for all this. I've been training under you for almost 12 years. So I've been able to see you progress in kind of maybe learn to learn, I guess would be one of the best ways to say it. But that's something that I've always admired about you, is you've always been really good at learning things, at learning and trying new things. So kind of the way I wanted to go with the question is, what advice would you give to somebody listening, not on like not only trying new things, but also getting good at new things?
Do you mean like in general, or do you mean like a specific topic?
I would say in general, if people want to use that for jiu-jitsu, or if we want to be more specific about jiu-jitsu after, but yeah. At first I would like to just say it generally.
Yeah, well, so I think the biggest thing is like being like a couple things. I think one, being super open-minded and kind of almost look at yourself as like a blank slate, especially when it comes to a topic you're not familiar with. And then being very like having a lot of humility in the sense that you know that you don't know, and you're willing to let other people know that you don't know. And then the last part of it would be having the courage and the kind of the persistence to ask questions of people who have been there, done that. Okay. And not everybody's like really forthcoming with information. There's some people that are like, hey, I did this on my own and I'm not showing you how. I figured it out. You figured it out. But I think a lot of us, like you and your dad and some other people I know, are natural teachers. And you feel like when you figure something out, you almost just want to share it naturally. Like it's like when you learn a new move that you just hit a bunch of times, the first thing you want to do is run and show someone and be like, hey, this is awesome. I just learned this. I've been hitting on everybody. You will too. And it's weird how that works. And I feel like people who are like natural teachers, they're like that. And so if you can find people like that, or just find people like, I've always heard success leaves footprints. And so instead of trying to take the hard way, and this kind of translates back to what we were talking about with MMA, is so training with somebody like GSP is like, and his coaches, instead of trying to figure all this out on my own, I was able to train with guys who have a lot of it figured out. Like they've been there, done that, and they've worked with some of the best people in the world. So instead of like trying to work so hard to reinvent the wheel, is go to people who have been there, done that, that have the experience, and ask questions. And then don't just ask and then not listen. Like some people do that. They ask a question and then they don't even really wait for the answer. Like ask the question and then really hear what they have to say. And then obviously it's not that there's like all answers are, one size fits all, that if it worked for them, it'll work for you. But there's a lot of stuff that people can tell you. It's like this real estate situation. It's like a couple, like 3 different people gave me some great advice. And a couple of the things I'm like, that doesn't really fit me. That I don't think that'll work for me. And then some of the things I'm like, oh my gosh, it hit a home run. I was like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And the way they do it, that's exactly how I can do it. So I think it's just, if you want to be better at something, start something, improve at something, I think look at people who have not only done it themselves, who are successful. It's like, someone that's never started a business, you probably don't want to ask them business advice. You know what I mean? But if you look at people who have done it, but then also people who have done it, but also seem to have that teacher mentality that are willing to share. And I'm not saying go try to just take their time, because people's time is worth money. So I'm not saying try to abuse that. But anytime you get a chance to be like, hey, how'd you do that? Or, hey, where'd you learn that? Or, hey, do you have a book you could recommend about that? Or is there a good website where you found this information? And then listen and then absorb it and try to use it. I just think that whole success leaves footprints principle has helped me a lot. And I've asked people, and don't get me wrong, I mean, work ethic is huge. It's not like you just ask for those things and then stuff has to happen. You still have to have the work ethic and the drive to be like, okay, well, I'm going to take all that information and then learn how to apply it. That's why I think I've heard someone say a long time ago that the saying that knowledge is power is completely incorrect, because you can have a bunch of knowledge, but if you don't know how to use it for anything, it's useless. Like, if you know how to build, a ship, but you're never near the ocean, how does that help you? You know what I mean? So it's like, knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. So if you can get this knowledge and then be able to transform it into what you're doing or apply it to what you're doing, I think that's huge.
That is really good. That was actually, I was just asking about, some of your keys to success. And one of the things that I had, or actually the main thing that I had written down, that I've always noticed, is that you've never been afraid to ask questions. Specifically, like maybe a few months ago, we did a seminar with John Thomas, and it was like a question and answer type seminar, and nobody else got to ask any questions.
I turned it into my seminar.
Because it was a Kyle Watson private lesson, because you asked all the questions.
I even hijacked other people's questions. You get through answering that one. I'm like, yeah, but what if they do this?
Yeah. That's cool and all, but don't answer what he said. He's a purple belt. Answer what I said.
That one.
And I think that was really, that's really cool. But that's always how you've been ever since I've been around. You've always ask people questions and advice that you thought, were good at something. Something that you wanted to be good at. Have you ever noticed that there are people that are not like that are, especially make it specifically to jiu-jitsu. Have you ever noticed people like, maybe I think they have a fear of people realizing that they don't know everything, and so they don't ask questions?
I actually think that's like incredibly common. I think that's like a good chunk of the population that, like, when I'm in a class teaching, and it's one of those things where it's hard because a lot of times I wait until the end of class to ask for questions. And then when they ask, it's like almost like, oh, well, class is ending. I don't have enough time to answer. Ask me after class, because I want to make sure that I give them a legit answer. But I've noticed that a lot of times when I ask questions, especially if I'm sitting in a class of 50 people, there should be a question. But a lot of times there's not. And I really do think it is because people don't want to feel like dumb, like, oh, everybody else in here already knows that. And they think that, why am I asking that? That's such a white belt question or something like that. And they're kind of embarrassed. And they don't want to think that it's a dumb question. You don't want people to think bad of them. But I think that's such a bad approach. And there's nothing wrong with being afraid and being kind of like nervous at first. But I think more people like you and I tell them, hey, it's okay to ask questions. It is okay to ask a question and let people know that you don't know, because we all didn't know. And there's a lot of us that still don't know. There's still stuff all of us don't know, and you need to ask. So, oh, hold on. Pig's grunting. Hold on. I'm letting her.
Okay.
Okay, if you hear any weird honking noises, she's inside now.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. You have a pig.
Yes.
Let's keep in mind, some people may not realize, they know we live in Illinois. They may think that we live in, like, the middle of nowhere in a farmland,
Yes.
but we don't. And you live in a very nice subdivision in the suburbs, and you have a potbelly pig.
Yes. It's my wife's fault. And yes, the main question is, do you eat bacon? Yes, I still eat bacon, and I'm pretty sure she's eating bacon. But
isn't that forced cannibalism? Is that legal?
Well, it's not forced. I mean, we don't make her eat it. She'll eat anything that smells good. But no. But anyway, yes, I do have a pig, and she's super annoying. I wouldn't recommend. I mean, I love her because she's my pet, but I would, if people are on the fence about getting a pig or not getting a pig, don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah.
What other animals do you have in your house? Because I know that it's not just a pig.
Yeah, so I have 3 dogs. I have 2 pugs, Brian and Stewie, and a Boston Terrier, Quagmire. And then I have an axolotl named Bobby. And for those of you who don't know what an axolotl is, it is a salamander. It is like the only salamander that does not come on land. It lives its whole life in water.
Oh, I didn't know I've been around Bobby the axolotl, and I was actually telling some of my my children's class about it. We were playing some game, and you had to think of an animal, and that was the animal that I was thinking of. Obviously, they couldn't guess it because none of them had heard of it, and they thought I was lying. And that's when it pays to be 25 in the kids class, because you can just dominate those games of thought.
Oh yeah. Show them who's boss.
Yeah, exactly. But because I know that people will love to hear this, obviously you have Brian, Stewie, and Quagmire. What is your pig's name?
Meg.
Yes, and so that is, if somebody is a Family Guy fan or familiar with the show, they will get the joke behind that.
Well, I know my wife's one that was pondering naming her Lois. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. It's a pig. Let's name her Meg. That makes total sense. So.
Okay. Last question about the pig. We've discussed this before, and I don't know if this is the right setting to discuss it. But hey, it's my show. I can ask whatever I want.
That's right.
If the pig were to die, would it be wrong to eat it?
I just asked this question. I just asked this to someone the other day. I don't know, man. It's like kind of one of those things, like, is it kind of like almost like honoring her, because it's like you gave us one last joy, you know what I mean? Like like the joy of tasty sandwiches or bacon or something like that? Or is that just like gross because like she's your friend and now you're eating her? So I don't know. Let's let your audience decide. If you had a pet pig, and let's say you had her for 10 years, we've only had her now for, I think, about 7. If you had her for 10 years and she died of natural causes, would you eat her or not, and why?
That is a good, seriously. I would love to hear these messages. The next time that you're on, we'll talk about it. We'll get some of the audience's perspective and hear what they think about, whether it's right or wrong. And then it begs the question, would you do some basic stuff like, you know, pork shoulder and doing like pulled pork and things like that? You truly honor her by curing her. You know what I mean? Curing the meat and, you know, maybe selling it at a high dollar.
Well, I could not do the whole thing where she's got like an apple in her mouth and I can see her. Because that'd be terrible.
Yeah, that's morally wrong for sure. Yeah, that's the line right there.
That's the line.
Yeah. But speaking of that, I do have a picture of you with a pig's head on your head.
remember, that's for a future podcast once they get to know me.
Okay, sorry. We will, man, there are a lot of cliffhangers in this episode.
There's a lot of
cliffhangers on this episode.
Oh, I know. It's like, it's stay tuned. That's good. That's how you get people to keep listening. You know
that makes sense.
And the thing is, like, you've been around me a lot and you have a lot of stories about me and a lot of dirt on me. So
yes. And I have refrained from telling most of those, you know, I thought it just might be a little too much for people on the first one.
Yes, agreed.
But back to jiu-jitsu. Okay, so we're talking about progressing at things, talking about asking a lot of questions, and we kind of kept it broad. But if we had to be specific to, you know, just in your opinion, in your words, what do you find is maybe the best way to get good at a position or a move or something that you want to get good at?
Well, I'm in agreement with some of the things that you've already mentioned before, and probably things that people have heard. I do think is important. Although I feel like with me training 3 times a week, it's harder for me to do this versus like someone who has a little bit more time. If you were able to train like 4 or 5 times a week, I think it's a little bit easier to segment out, like, this is my drilling time, this is my like hard round time. You know, I honestly usually have to do both because I get so little time. It's kind of hard to find that balance. But if I had to say, I think that whole idea, as you mentioned before, of positional sparring is really huge. But I also think one of the things that I even still struggle with today, so this is one of those things where I even have a hard time practicing what I preach, but I am aware of this weakness, and I think it's one of the most common weaknesses across the board, white belt to black belt, but especially white and blue belt, especially nowadays with so many instructionals out there and YouTube. I think that...
Can you go back to white belt to blue belt? I just lost for a second.
That's okay. Just from like white belt to black belt, but I was saying like a lot of times this happens mostly at white and blue belt in the earlier stages, is what we commonly refer to as shiny object syndrome. And that is that, like, you'll be on something and you might make a little progress or you're working on it and whatever, but then you see, BJJ Fanatics has the new, spider de la worm upside down whatever, and you're like, I want to do that because you think, I can do that and I'll get good at it and I'll have a one up on everybody, you know what I mean, because they won't know it. I'll get the new cutting edge thing and I'll work on it. And then what happens is you end up jumping around a bunch and you end up being that jack of all trades, master of none type of thing. Whereas, like, I think that's where it comes back to setting goals and then having accountability and in ways that you can manage your systems to reach those goals. Is that you say, I'm going to give myself this amount of time, and no matter how appealing and cool something new looks, I will not move on from this. Or maybe pick 2 things. It doesn't have to be necessarily one. Maybe it's something from top and something from bottom. Maybe I'm going to work this specific pass and then this one bad position escape or something. But pick something and like give yourself a specified amount of time. If it's not something super complicated, you can just make it a couple of weeks. But if it's a broader topic, like say like guard retention, or maybe it's like I just want to get better at my ability to attack turtle, something like that, then give yourself a couple months and say, no matter what I see pop up on YouTube, or no matter what I see, I may still watch some other videos, but I'm not going to deviate. I'm going to go in and pressure test this every single time I train. I'm going to pressure test it, and I'm going to focus on it. And then that way you won't have that shiny object syndrome and jump around. I still struggle with that myself, but I feel like since I've recognized it, I have been better at sticking with one thing and improving on it. That would be a little bit of my advice.
So for me, this is really for me specifically. I feel like if I have a focus, I am very good at getting better at that focus. The hardest thing for me is finding that focus. Why, you know what I mean? Like, so I guess kind of what I'm asking is, how do you, because you have a very specific game, like a game that I don't know if I've ever really rolled with many people that have a game like yours. And so obviously there was some choosing of what you want to play. So kind of how do you choose what you want to be working?
Well, I think mine's been more of a product of my experiences more than my choosing. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of times you take certain things from your coaches, and if it works well for you too, cool. Like a lot of times you'll see a lot of people. Not, I don't think that's always the case. I mean, I think you play a completely different game than I do, and I'm not saying that everybody plays just like their coach, but a lot of times, if something your coach did works really well for you, it's easier for you to mimic because you have a perfect model that does it. You know what I mean? If they do it really well and it works for you, then it should work pretty well. You know, that kind of whole success leaving footprints type of thing. So I feel like I took a lot of things from a past coach, and then also I think a lot of my game is a product of me always going back and forth from MMA and gi jiu-jitsu. Because what happened a long time through my MMA career, I think I had a little bit of a hard road. Not as harder than anyone else's, but I'm just saying, I should say different, not necessarily harder. Everybody's road in jiu-jitsu and the combat sports is hard. But what I would do is I would take a couple months and get ready for an MMA fight, and I would fight. And then I would prepare for a jiu-jitsu tournament, and then I would do a fight and then a jiu-jitsu tournament. I mean, a lot of people don't know, like, that was one of the things that was like, I was really happy with the year that, the year that I won the Pans was the same year I went to the UFC. So it's like kind of weird when you see that, like, man, I was still doing gi jiu-jitsu tournaments and still trying to get to the highest level of MMA. So I was always doing that. And why do I bring that up? It's because I feel like my game, I always had to adapt it for both. So that's why you see that my game is like not very grip dependent. I don't play very much lasso. I don't play spider. I don't play a lot of like, I feel like my game over time developed to where I can easily transition from gi, no gi, and MMA without having to make a lot of like adjustments. But also with that, I feel like I carry over when you see me train and form. I feel like my game's somewhat boring. Not that you can't be flashy having an MMA game. There's some people have like, still flashy, great games and what have you. But I just feel like I've always like kind of been on that. I've always kind of made my game like not taking big risks and kind of like really trying to just be like smashy because I always wanted to be on top in MMA and like stay on top. So I feel like I kind of brought that to the gi as well. But anyways, back to like how do you decide what you want to work on? So I think I look at that two ways. One thing that I do myself, which I think is something that's helped me, is like, don't jump. I think if you're this is gonna be a long answer. Hopefully it makes sense. I come back around. But if you have like a skill set and you jumped to something, like I kind of use the analogy like say you want to be good at like X guard and single leg X guard, but you have no experience with half guard or butterfly, only close guard. You're gonna have problems because you don't have that in-between guard that's a bridge that naturally translates to that one. So I think what happens is, I think one of the best things you can do is, like, when you decide on something to focus on, is look at something that is not very far off from what you're doing now, something that's just still within reach. Like maybe you're doing some kind of smash passes that get you to mount, but maybe you're not great at mount. Okay. So then you say, okay, well, I find myself that this type of passing gets me to this position more often. So maybe I'll say, okay, I'm going to focus on kind of like your end goal training you were talking about, is saying like, okay, I'm always getting here. Well, okay, now I need to be good at what do I do when I get there? You know what I mean? Or like you said, like figuring out kind of reverse engineering, like say, I'm already pretty good at the back. So now what passes get me to the back? or what sweeps get me to the back. And then just do something that's slightly off of what you're already good at that really kind of translates. That's what I think is, and that's what I feel like I do. But the one time I would say to make a big jump is when you're plateauing. When you're plateauing and you're in a slump, I say go for something drastic, like far from your game, something just to excite you and pull you out of the rut, and go for something that might just completely open a door that you didn't see before to kind of pull you out of that rut. So I would say if you're plateauing, go for something totally out there. Like if you've been playing top and you haven't, then all of a sudden say, okay, I'm gonna try berimbolo, or I'm gonna try some like reverse daily heaver, or something that's just out of my comfort zone, and then that'll kind of pull you out of that rut. But otherwise, I would say just go a little, something that's a tangent of what you're already good at. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually just being in a rut of jiu-jitsu is actually what one of my next podcasts is going to be about. And just dealing with getting out of that. That's something that I think everybody falls into. The longer you train, the more times you're going to fall into that, where you just feel like you're not progressing, and so.
Well, yeah, that's why I think that's really big, and you'll probably talk about that more. I don't want to hijack that, but I think it's really important to like shake it up. Like if you're in a rut, you can't just do something little and hope to shake yourself out of that rut. I always tell people, do something. Go to a different academy's open mat and roll, or go to a seminar of somebody you've never been to, or do a private lesson, or buy an instructional of some kind of technique that's out of your comfort zone. Or like I was saying, try to work on something that you just have no familiarity with at all. Something to just really shake it up and get you out of your comfort zone. I found that's pulled me out of ruts before, where I'm just like, man, where maybe I never end up getting good at that one thing, but it made a connection that I didn't have before between what I was doing and understanding that new position. And I think sometimes that can make you find a move in between that really just like, oh, wow, the light bulbs go on.
That makes a ton of sense. I just have one more question for you, one more thought. We're almost out of time. And it's been really good. It's been really fun. But I just wanted to kind of finish with this. You've had, just your school being so big and so successful, you've had a lot of students come through. Are there any traits, maybe that aren't athletic traits, that you noticed have helped people to progress, or that those type of people seem to progress more than others?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of things. One is one's kind of almost cliche, but it's like there's no replacement for it, and that's consistency. It's like I've seen some guys who, like, man, they just seem like they were super unathletic, and I'm like, man, I think that guy's gonna quit. Like in my head, I already think that guy's not gonna last. And then one of the most exciting things is to see them just keep coming, and not only keep coming, but they're there 3 to 4 days a week. And then all of a sudden you just see like a couple of breakthrough days where there's like, oh my gosh, he's getting good. Oh my gosh. I just said that today. I saw a guy last night in Nogi who's a big guy. You wouldn't even really think of him playing single leg X. And I saw him hit that toe hold from single leg X. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know he knew that. And I got excited because I'm like, man, so it's like, I think consistency is huge, because at some point they're going to have a breakthrough. They're going to just that consistency. I think that's huge. And plus just being around other people who are constantly progressing, it's hard for them not to pull you up with them. You know what I mean? Like the all boats rising, you know what I mean? Kind of idea. It's like, it's hard for you to not kind of get pulled up with them, as long as you're hanging around, the guys in the club that are kind of mentors. But the other thing I think is kind of what we already touched on in that ability, or I shouldn't even say ability, that humility to, from the get-go, not only ask questions, but realize that you can learn from anyone. Like I see people all the time that are asking blue belts questions, or asking maybe even they're a 1-stripe white belt, but they're asking a 3-stripe white belt question, and not being like, you always have people in the academy that are like, not very many, but there's always a few. They're just like, oh, I can't learn from him. He's only a blue belt. I got to listen to what Kyle says, and that's it. And that's such a wrong mentality, because you can learn, like I've learned so much from you. I've learned so much from like a ton of my students, and you can learn from anybody. So I think that trait is huge. Your ability to say like, hey, maybe he's a white belt overall, but he's kind of a high blue in this one position, and I suck at it. You know what I mean? So saying like, I'm going to learn from them the things they're good at. You know what I mean? And I think the good thing about our gym is that we do have that mentor mentality. So I think it's easier because people are giving. There's some schools that are very closed-minded, and even if you had that person in that setting that would ask the questions, not everybody would be so forthcoming with, there's not a lot of people that want to be like, here's what will beat me. You know what I mean? But I think at our academy, a lot of people are like that. They're like, oh, like, yeah, I just beat you with this, but if you do this, it'll stop it next time. You know what I mean? So I think those are probably the two biggest traits is consistency, and that humility to understand that you can learn from everyone and ask questions. Those are the big things. And then as you get down the road, some of those other things we already talked about are going to become important, like how to pull yourself out of plateau, because that's where people quit. They get frustrated and they get stuck in a rut and they quit. So that'll become a little more important later on, because when those people are so new, they don't really know what a plateau is, and they don't know that they're stuck in it until someone kind of makes it clear to them. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
But I think those are the biggest things is asking questions, and knowing that, everybody in the room has something to offer you, and then consistency.
Man, that was a really good answer. Thank you for that. I know that the listeners are going to really like this episode. It's really informative, and I learned some good stuff on it. And it's funny that, I've bbeen training with you for so long, and I can still ask questions and get different perspectives and different advice on them. It's really fun for me to be able to do that. So thank you so much for being on. And I would love if you would come on again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. But I got a question for you. You
Yeah.
said, you're talking about your end goal learning. What's your end goal, or your end goal like objectives? What's your end goal for your podcast?
For my podcast? Okay, so that is a good question. Nobody has asked me that. And you know that I pretty much am the same, the way I like train and teach jiu-jitsu, is I take those same thoughts to regular life. And so this podcast is no different. A big thing for me is I don't want to try to make this like some monetized thing really quick. You know what I mean? Before I even know what I want this podcast to be. If you listen to some of the episodes, they're very different from each other.
Yeah.
Some I tell a little bit more story and use it kind of like a metaphor or an analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Some we do interviews like this and kind of pick people's brain. I really do want a lot of it to happen organically.
Sure.
And I've also made the decision that like I won't do any type of sponsorships or anything like that until at least episode 100. And I also won't put any money into it. I won't make it anything but a hobby until episode 100. I won't do any type of advertising that isn't organic, that costs me money. And so at that point, then I want to make some decisions on what it is. But I don't want to try to put myself in a box and say, I want this podcast to be this, and then always be referring back to it like, well, no, I said it was going to be like this. And because sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes people are going to say, man, you had an idea there, but I just didn't like it. I didn't care for it. So, and just going to kind of use that, it is using those first 100 episodes just to test, what it even could be.
Nice. Well, awesome, man. Well, that's good. I'll have better questions to stump you next time.
Okay. Well, next time that you're on, we'll go from like, I think we kept these stories and things at about a 1, maybe a 2 at some points. I say we get up to like a 4 the next time that you're on.
I'm down. I'm down.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for being on, Kyle. You have a good night and have a happy New Year.
You too, buddy. Hey, I'm proud of you, man. Have a great day.
All right.
And that is the episode. I just want to thank you guys for checking this one out and listening to an old interview of my coach and I talking. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's always interesting anytime you try something new on your podcast. You're not sure if it's going to go over well at all. You're not sure if this great idea that you had, if anyone's going to even care about it, or if everyone's going to say, man, I've already listened to that episode. But to be honest, I'm sure that people who consistently listen to podcasts do the same thing. But I learned the most from a podcast a lot of times on my second or third listen even, because I'm finally understanding the general idea of what they're talking about, and then I can start to dive into the fine details. And so I thought that this repost method every other Tuesday might give you guys the ability to do that with podcast episodes you've already heard and maybe you've enjoyed and you've never gotten back to, or you just kind of forgot about. And so I was hopefully that is helpful for you guys and you like it, or maybe even this was your first time hearing this interview and you also could have gotten something out of it. It's so weird when you're creating content. It's so common to start to think in your own head, man, once it's been said once, everybody's heard it. But the truth is, some of the best content creators really hit you with the same knowledge over and over and over again, so you actually can finally understand it. And sometimes I think that might be what we need to do a little more of on the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu show, and not just always jumping to the next new idea. But that being said, just want to thank Kyle Watson for being on the show 3 years ago, and then even an early thanks for the next time he's on the show, which we don't have I don't have a date yet, but I promise you it will be very, very soon. And I know that whatever we decide to discuss, you guys will enjoy it. You'll learn something out of it, and I will learn something out of it too. And so, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoy today's episode. I hope you found it helpful. I hope that you're so excited about it. Hope you're ready for Thursday, where we are going to talk about why most jiu-jitsu instructionals absolutely suck and why seminars do too. And then I'll even make sure to mention some people that I like and think you should actually buy instructionals and seminars from. Wow, that was a long loop there. Most importantly, I hope that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.